colorism does exist.
It's a constant competition to see what race is better.
Everyone's scared of something that's different than them.
I think everyone's being racist.
That's definitely gray.
What would you say are some things that you've noticed within the educational system or in general that kind of makes it seem as if, you know, there's discrimination going on, basically?
I mean, let's talk about the fact that, like, we only learn about Black history one month out of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's talk about the fact that these, like, standardized tests ask questions that, like, cater to, like, white folks and, like, their knowledge.
So I grew up in Oklahoma, and I moved here when I was like 14. And when I moved to New York, I lived in the Bronx.
Okay.
And like it was like the biggest culture shock ever, because the schools suck. Like, I don't even know how to put it. Like, we didn't have a real art class.
Mm-hmm.
Like our library was barely used. Like, even though there were books in it,
Mm-hmm.
like school felt more like jail when I moved to New York.
Let's talk about the school to prison pipeline and, like, how there are more school safety officers,
Mm-hmm.
air quotes, in New York City schools than there are, like, actual police officers in Boston.
Okay.
So we have, like, a complete city of police officers, like, running through our schools,
Right.
arresting our youth. Like, the average age of suspension has gone down to 6. Like, what are you doing at 6 that you're getting suspended?
Yeah.
Like, you're throwing like, it's like all of these things are kind of like setting people up to, like, put them in
Against
prison.
us.
I work with kids who've come out of the juvenile justice system and ex-offenders and, you know, hard to employ people. And, like, that's, you know, have you read the book, The New Jim Crow, about how, like, mass incarceration, the having the mark of a record, you know, and who mostly, because of the way our drug laws work in this country, and who's mostly going to be affected by that. And they've essentially banned things like voting for ex-offenders or having to, you know, check the box. And these are, you know, it's mostly people of color, men of color very specifically. So there's also racism in that way.
Honestly, like, they don't want to humanize us.
Right.
Like, the laws in this country aren't trying to humanize us. They're trying to just put us back in prison and trying to enslave us. That's why, like, our 14th Amendment is just like, it abolished slavery, but it made it okay if you're a prisoner.
Right.
And why is it that, like, African American men are, like, the most, like, the highest population in prison? Like, why is that the highest number of people being stopped and frisked in New York? Like, it's all cyclical. Like, it's all happening for a reason.
It is a different kind of racism, but it's still racism nonetheless. It does keep people from getting housing, from getting jobs, from, you know, when people are being assaulted, when there's crime, when you have things like stop and frisk happening to young men of color, that says something.
I've spoken about race with my friends pretty often. My best friend's actually a sociology major. She studies urban issues and all that. We're usually on conversations about white privilege. It's usually what comes up. Versus what we can't get away with, what they can.
What are some of those things that you think that Caucasians can get away with?
A lot of it, I guess, police brutality doesn't happen quite as often towards them as it will to us because of the negative stereotypes.
It's definitely important when you are white to be cognizant of the fact that you are given a lot of advantages in society, you know? Like, when you look at it statistically, a white man who has gone to prison, a white cisgender man who has gone to prison has a better chance of getting a job than a black man, a black cisgender man who hasn't gone to prison. You know, that says something about where we're at in society.
Right.
Yeah.
It takes more money to, like, build prisons and, like, put someone in prison than it does to educate them.
Right.
And, like, that is where our taxpayer money is going. Like, that's, like, all of these prisons have become, like, private corporations that, like, are, like, feeding off of black and brown bodies, like, gender non-conforming bodies, like, men of color. Like, that is racist. Like, our laws, like, specifically, like, why the system was, like, created in this country was to, like, police, like, free slaves and Native American folk. So, like, thinking about the history of this country and, like, where we are today, like, y'all can't tell me something's not fucked up.
Right.
Like, and if you don't think it's fucked up, you're not paying attention.
Right.
And if you are paying attention, you just don't care, then I'm like, I don't even want to live on the world with you. Like, we need to go to Mars or something. Like, the sun is nice this time of year.
I think situations are getting a little bit better when it comes to race, a little bit better and a little bit worse, all in the same sense, because there's both sides are fighting. There's two sides to the story. One side wants to connect, and the other side wants to rip things apart.
This country was founded on the backs of black and brown people, on the land of Native American people and indigenous folks. Like, this country has, like, a long history of, like, turmoil and turbulence and, like, using, like, our bodies as a commodity. Like, that is not going to change overnight.
Right.
And we are not going to, I mean, I have my humanity. Like, a white person could look at me and say whatever the fuck they want, but at the end of the day, like, I know I'm human.
Right.
But, like, there are a lot of people who are not in that place, who don't know that, like, you know you should be loved. Like, you are loved. Like, you are amazing. You're capable. Like, don't let, like, these white folks fool you about shit.
So what steps do you think that we have to take to combat that way of thinking?
Well, statistical, data, scientific data shows that racism is real, or just anyone who is not the favored, like, white male American. Like, if you're a female or if you're a minority, you experience lower wages, you experience racism, sexism, things like that, and that's played out in the data. So I think raising awareness, but taking active steps